and I would say
Okay, cool.
record to the cloud.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I picked. Yeah, so what do you want to talk about besides school and how the MSW program could be a lot better?
Um, I think, and I don't know if it'll show my captions, but um, I don't know. I like sending them. No, it's so like I I don't know. School is it's such a weird thing because so did I tell you I got a job? Um,
I
or
think so. Yeah, I think I saw
yeah,
you post on social media about it, I think.
yeah. Which, by the way, anyone who's watching this, check out your LinkedIn. There was just a big data leak. So if you have a LinkedIn, maybe check it on that. They
Okay.
just had like a big data leak on it. But so yeah, it's actually completely not related to social work. I got it because my friends in the communications department, and a it's like I'm mentoring someone in journalism, which is great. And I think we talked about it, but I think too, it just shows like how much, I don't know, how much sometimes I feel both burdened by the school and by social work as a whole, that I jokingly all the time, I'm like, I hate being a social worker. People are like, oh, you know, you want to study? I'm like, yeah, but I want to do the least social worky job possible. My
Yeah.
friend the other day is like, oh, you could try to get your PhD in sociology. I'm like, how did you guess what I wanted to pick? But no, it's, and I mean, like, what is something that I wanted to show? Oh, and one of the things is that like even people who I feel like might not have complaints, actually a lot of people have complaints, and I don't hear about them, and or I don't think this is the type of person who it would bug them, but it actually really does bug them. Like we had a town hall, which I hate. A lot of time I hate these words that like what do they even mean? And like a town, like
Town
we
hall.
know what it is, but it's just silly. And then they're talking about it like like, okay, so we're just gonna talk about how much there's like no options for any other sort of like financial aid and or
You're
any
talking
sort
about
of
the
like,
one that they had for the school of social work, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like they organized it. I didn't go to it. I was like, I'm not gonna go to that. I just remember talking about it or doing like a meeting or something. But so it is really demoralizing. I think I don't know if I would be equally demoralized if it was like maybe in an MBA or something, because at least I'm like, I get it, I get this neoliberalist, but in social
I'm gonna
work,
make a lot of money when I finish this.
I guess, yes, I am, or like, or with social work, it's like they don't really talk about like, a lot of things are just kind of like it's not in polite company kind of thing to talk about. I do miss the days of scaring off guest professors by saying some weird Marxist shit.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
But
it's kind of like in a functioning society, like the social work profession would become obsolete, but like the United States is so far from that. Like, unfortunately, we'll probably have, you know, careers for as long as we want until, we're able to create a much more, equitable and sustainable society.
yeah, I mean, I did you see like this horrible and I guess I do want to say it's like it's kind of a sensitive topic, but like there's been a lot of mental health, um like people have had and seeked out extra mental health care because of the pandemic, and I'm like, yeah, well, it's I guess we always have jobs. So I'm like, should have gone into clinical. But even then, it's, you're right, like maybe we still have to deal with that, but even then it's really hard to deal with when you don't have um a universal like healthcare, how are people going to seek out like these social workers, counselors, and stuff like that. Um, and even with social workers, at least in America, it seems to be done with the uttermost like lean. Um, and that it actually used to call that they would bring the lean system. It was just like work the government like a business, and even then, it's just like I mean, like, I don't know, at least social workers in other countries with a stronger welfare state, they might be in like a, neoliberal place like Europe or Western Europe, but at least I'm like, at least I probably bet they're less frustrated. I'm
Yeah.
actually, did I show you this book last time? That I'm reading? It's called, oh, I just show it because of the thing. I'm just gonna turn off like this dude's virtual background. None. Welcome to my mess. Um, but it's called like and it might be that in the mirror, but it's like the case for universal basic services. And it's from England, so but it's basically like how UBI was brought onto the um in the 2020 election,
Mhm.
and it sounded like a good thing until you started hearing like all of these like neoliberal
Yeah.
aspects of it, like oh, you get UBI but we're gutting every
Yeah.
social service.
Mhm.
So this book, and the writers are from England, so maybe that's why, but they're like saying they're arguing for universal basic services, so just a universal basic service, and the responsibility of health as a collective. And they're like not saying UVI is like bad, like it would be a great addition, but if you had to pick one or the other, this is like a good argument for it. And I remember asking my friend, and I was just like, what do you think, which one would you prefer? And she's like, oh, UVI, because I think it's more easily implemented like in Alaska, which is might not be true. I think in Alaska it's a little complex, but it's just so telling that people that, because she's also a union organizer and stuff like that for government workers, so telling that because my friend thinks it's a pragmatist or realist, and they like think it's just like capital realism. Is there like a thing that we could call like social worker realism? um in which you're just so you know dumbfounded by the system and everything that you rather be like, I rather take a UBI over, what are they calling it, UBS. But on so much reading, I'll tell you more about it. I think I might have brought it up last time. I was just like, I'm gonna finish reading it before this time, but
Yeah, it's
um
like I would definitely pick universal health care over UBI, especially if it was only going to be $1,000 a month, like which I think is what Andrew Yang's freedom dividend was going to be. It's like medical bills like could easily be 10 times that in the United States if you don't have insurance and you get injured and you have to go to the emergency room or you have to see someone out of network. It's like, yeah, and like you were saying, his version of it was basically just this Trojan horse in order to completely gut what little safety net we have in the United States. And yeah, I mean, if we're going to have UBI, it obviously should be in addition to a robust social safety net. Otherwise, like, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
yeah, it is ridiculous. I think he this is like, I don't even know why he tried to embarrass himself by running in the New York City mayor race, but he's like, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a shelter just for domestic violence victims? And it just shows how out of touch he is.
Yeah, because
And it
nobody's
is,
thought of that before.
yeah, and it is the Trojan horse. And that, I mean, like, I think, oh my gosh, I need to send you like my favorite article ever. I think I've talked about it. I wrote on it for graduate school for my entrance essay was like, um, for my entrance essay was just like, social services are impossible under neoliberalism. But it is kind of, they do talk about, yeah, the Trojan horse too during the Reagan and Thatcher era, which is like what we're seeing, and then just compounded by Clinton, Bush, Obama, uh, so on, so on. So, yeah, just like another way to, mm, I don't know. I remember one time at my old job with the state, they were doing this thing, which it was just gonna be like, I think it was the Washington, um, like, trust, like for like when you're older. But I was just like, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. And you're kind of passing an income tax without calling it an income tax. And also, but only to use it the way that you want to use it. And why are we making, you know, harder for people to access Medicaid, which would be, I mean, sometimes it is terribly unaffordable, like people without much. But anyway, why are we making this harder? And my boss was just like, it's just the way it is. And so yeah, it's just, um, people don't question it enough. I mean, I feel like at least the students, I feel like even meeting other students, that's the one thing that really helps because it feels like a lot of us are on the same page. And maybe
Yeah.
collectively we can all just be like, no more. And you're like, no more.
Yeah, it's like within our program, I haven't met like too many people, or at least anybody that's been like vocal for the support of capitalism. There definitely seems to be a lot of, anti-capitalist sentiment, and kind of makes me wondering, like, is that, well, because I know like a lot of the surveys that they've done, just younger people in general, I think people overall have really started to sour from, capitalism being such a, supposedly wonderful thing, because if you've actually lived under it, especially currently, like it's a really crappy system unless you're, part of the capitalist class who owns the means of production, unless you're a Gates or a Bezos or, somebody like that. Like it's obviously not serving you very well. So this makes me wonder, like, do people share that sentiment in other kind of departments? Or I feel like it's probably more prevalent within social work. I mean, probably you go to the school of business, they're probably going to be, cheering on, billionaires and millionaires and hoping to become one themselves.
But I think that, yeah, I think it honestly, so I went in today because someone found a book at a free library, my friend, and gave it to me. Which is funny. The conversations about free libraries could be another, like sort of like entire thing about like the undermining of the library and just for a way easy for people to get rid of books. But someone, it was called like absurd something, I'll have to remember, but it's by this man called Tyler Cowen, and it was just like asking for like accelerationism of like capitalism. And I'm like, but these people are like respected in the economic world. I'm like, how are these people like respected in the economic world? um because it is awful. Like, yeah, I wonder like in what other departments are like this is like fear mongering that you'll get indoctrinated when you go to school. But I like I said so many like completely opposite when I was in school. I was just like, I'm like, everyone's very, very, very conservative. And college Republicans are very much like very fast. But then I got this graphic novel instead.
I
I
know
know
what
what I
it
am. It's a what by a woman. It's by a woman about a woman painter who people didn't pay attention to, and she signed it for me. There's a little like
Oh, that's
feminist, but
awesome.
with a fist up, like feminist Marxism.
Very
Just
cool.
what I really identify with. Um, but yeah, I mean, in some departments, more. It has been brought up more, which is actually why sometimes I think I find our department to be lacking because I know like the gender, sexuality, and women's studies department has been pretty amazing. Even okay, this is why I was like so annoyed by that Jacobin thing, like talking shit about post-colonial theory, which I have my own things about post-colonial theory. But the thing was that they were like, "Oh, they don't care about, like, the working class or blah, blah, blah," but, like, I have a professor who, like, focuses on that, and all of her work is, like, on just, the working class and the economy and the rural areas in India. So I think there's a lot of other departments that I guess depends who's teaching you, but I feel like I have encountered a lot of very, like, sort of Marxist, or at least very much, at least somewhat class conscious folks. And I still feel like oftentimes we don't even have that from our professors. There is one professor who I had from the School of Social Work who was awesome, and yeah, I think he said that he's like, "No, I have a mug of Leon Trotsky," and I'm like, "I want that mug. I want that mug."
Yeah, I think it's really like funny, like there's people on the right, kind of conservative pundits always talk about how, radical and leftist, you know, the universities are on like a structural level, but it's like that's so far from the truth. Like somebody in our program a while ago just basically talked about how colleges are corporations, and that's so like true. Like just makes me think of how yeah, like the town hall that the school of social work had, and basically they just used every excuse in the book saying we're doing all these things, we actually charge really low compared to these other places, we're highly ranked, we're doing everything you can, but we actually can't like do anything beyond that. But here's you know an hour and a half like PowerPoint slides showing you all these things we can do, but we're actually not going to do anything more to help you, even though we're charging you tens of thousands of dollars, and all you're getting access to is Zoom classes and and Canvas. So it's like I really wish like universities and colleges were this radical leftist socialist communist space, but it's like no, like they're just run like any other big business, unfortunately, in the US, at least from my experience.
I think it's like, yeah, it is kind of like, I'm like, where are these, like, you know, conservatives, talking about this like
I want to go to
thing.
those schools.
Yeah, I want to go to those schools. I want to go to the schools. Like, I'm like, we're just like, I guess we can, instead of like having a prestigious ranking, we should have like a most Marxist school. But yeah, it still is this like, I don't know, like there's no indoctrination. And in fact, there is some sort of indoctrination, and that is still a neoliberal indoctrination, actually.
Mhm.
Like, they talk about indoctrination one way, but we like, what about indoctrination this way,
Yeah.
of like a neoliberal system of like, you are you're the professional and this person's a non-professional. So there's boundaries between you.
Mhm.
Like, well, how does that challenge systems of power?
Yeah, doesn't really.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I don't know. I'm hoping that um it's better somehow, but I don't know. I do think there's some cool radical professors. But I think a lot of the time still, like, we I was like, well, why do ADP have to pay like, these extra fees? And they're like, oh, well, without this fees, they wouldn't be able to have the program. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's something how ridiculous is that though? Like people for the most part are having to work while going to school. That's why they're in the EDP program to begin with, and yet they're getting charged more for that. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, they are. And like, it is ridiculous. And it's just like, it just seems like a tautology. Be like, well, we can't because of this. And like, well, have you considered your fees? Probably don't allow some people to, might get accepted, but they're like, nah, I can't afford this because it's outrageous. And yeah, and it feels like it's targeted as like more of like working class people, because yeah, it is, I don't know. And it's just, it's just really, really, really tone deaf, I would say. I think that's the word for it. And I'm like, look, you're underpaying your PhD students who are probably teaching this, or your MSW students who are probably teaching this, I don't think that their labor is getting valued as much as, that would be discussed so high, because they're also exploiting them. So really, tell us more. Why can't we
Yeah,
get rid of this?
I forgot what school it was in California, but I think it was their like PhD students went on strike not too long ago because they were basically getting paid, poverty wages, and the school wasn't willing to pay them that. And it's like, yeah, again, just kind of another example that really shows like these colleges are just being run like an Amazon or a Microsoft or a Walmart, which is like, yeah, again, just complete opposite of what the right, what conservatives like to paint these universities as being. And also kind of makes me wonder, like, yeah, do these, people within like the MSW program, like the higher ups, the administrators, did they, once kind of think or view the world more like how we do, then they got into those positions, then they kind of had to like toe the line, or did maybe it kind of attract, a different mindset, a different type of, you know, social worker? It kind of has me thinking about that too.
I kind of feel the same way, because like sometimes I had a professor who was like supposed like who I thought was very radical, and then I remember like um I don't know why, but they were like, but Bill Gates is such a good guy, and I was just
What? Oh
like,
my
oh my
God.
gosh, like, and it's like, dude, just like,
No.
not like other billionaires. And then I tried to explain all the reasons of why, like, like, of there's a million, but always Bill Gates, king of neoliberalism, is a good one. But there's a million reasons, and I try to explain, and then
That
he's like,
person like teaches within the program of social work.
no, actually, they teach in the program of public health. They actually are
Okay.
part of the, I'll let you know who it is, but they're actually, I think they are part of the school of social work, but they don't really teach in it. And that also really kind of bugs me, because this person is pretty high up, and it's like pretty well known in public health, sort of like,
How bad Bill
circles.
Gates is to
Yeah,
like within public health, like, yeah.
yeah, no, and no, this person too is like, they hold a lot of kind of power, and they speak a lot of, and they have shown me like some radical stuff, but it was just so interesting. And then at the end, it was just like, oh, just, we gotta accept. And I was like, you can hate more than one billionaire at a time. Um, and it was just, I mean, I heard that there was recently a protest outside of the foundation, but it turned out to be a bunch of anti-maskers, so
uh,
nothing too cool there.
yeah, there's good reasons to protest against the Gates Foundation and Bill Gates himself, but yeah, not, yeah, the anti-mask route, that's a little bit misguided, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to vandalize it, I it doesn't I'm all for it, but like, it definitely it's not the kind of protest I would join. Um,
Yeah, it's
is
so like, I just find it so nauseating when people, working class people, are stands for like billionaires. Like I had made this Twitter thing or this Instagram post several months back, and this guy, like working class but pretty privileged, was like talking about how good like billionaires are. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? I guess they're just they're gonna get to that point at some point, so don't talk shit because I'm gonna be, Bill Gates or Elon Musk one day. It's like, no, we don't need more billionaires in the world. We need to redistribute that wealth because they were able to amass that amount of wealth by exploiting the workers at the companies at Microsoft or Amazon or Walmart, wherever, and the environment as well. It's like, oh my, just like, what are these people thinking?
that yeah, it is like, yeah, you're like, no, you definitely don't want to be this person, or you don't want to be defending them, or you're like, I'm like, at least keep it to yourself. Like, why would you say this? But I think it's part of the big scam of philanthropy, of like, oh, we're so billionaires are so good because then they use their wealth to,
Launder their
you know,
image, basically. Yeah.
yeah, but they make more money under that. Like I've heard
Tax
like non
write-offs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and like I've heard nonprofit hospitals actually make more money than profit for profit hospitals, which is kind of interesting. But and then I was reading an article and someone used the word philanthrocapitalism, and I was just like, that's redundant though, isn't it? Because it
Mhm.
feels
The
like
same thing.
yeah, yeah, and then they get to control how this money goes. They get to fund charter schools. They get to design these like programs and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And
Bill Gates is
instead
a
of
big fan of charter school. It's funny you bring that up.
yeah, no, it's Bill Gates. I'm gonna have to watch that one. But Bill Gates, King of Neoliberalism. Did I ever show you that one?
I don't think so.
It's just so funny. It's like it's really good. I just try to show it to people. Sometimes when I go on first dates, I'm like, yo, you have to watch this first. I'm like, what is the
Funny.
litmus test for Marxism dating? It's like,
It's that show.
yeah,
Awesome.
but it's no, they were and like I remember like because their big focus is like education and stuff like that. A lot of or a big part of it is that, and I remember in the video they talked about they forced these kids to do this particular things this particular way, and it just did not work at all well. But then the teachers were basically being audited like Microsoft employees, and um, so it was not again really thinking about different ways of learning or like critical thinking. It's just like get this test done, get this evaluation, like
Mhm.
like as if you're working for Microsoft, and guess in a way they are. Um, so yeah, I mean he also has like stock on like with Monsanto.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not against like GMOs, but I'm definitely against big companies that are like, copywriting seeds and then because of trades like NAFTA or CAFTA, like it throws like farmers that are already so um so on the margins even more. Like it's terrible, and he is all for that. I'm kind of happy the divorce has kind of brought down his image level a little bit, but I don't know.
Well, I
Even
think I
like
saw like I don't know how accurate it was, but I think one of the reasons they ended up getting divorced was because of the relationship that he had with like Jeffrey Epstein. I think they were pretty close, and Melinda wasn't a huge fan of that because like Jeffrey Epstein was a huge creep, sex trafficker, all that stuff. So I'd be interesting to like how much that like played a part.
yeah, because it
Yeah,
happened two
she
years.
doesn't, I mean, I don't know. She doesn't just seem like as much of a villain as he is for some reason. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe you have to look into. Well, it is kind of interesting, and I think I mean so for that there's also the fact that the disability center, the D center, like the big one of the biggest like disability things with like UW or like culture is funded by her, by it's like there's a Mary Gates Hall or whatever. um Also I was looking, and Paul Allen before he died, he made up a shit ton of companies just around Seattle. Like it's like a stepping like over like Legos or something. There's just a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I think I remember like, and I think it has to do not only with just being like a tech person, but just also like the amount of money and the very like anarcho-capitalist. Actually, no, I'm not even gonna say that because that's just a stupid concept. But the like ultra capitalist like method. Because beforehand, I back when I was like more of a baby, sort of like not really paying attention to tech, and I just was like, oh, Tesla sounds cool because like Tesla, But someone gave me this article about like Elon Musk like first wife, and like the way that he treated her almost like a startup, and made her like dye her hair and stuff like that. And okay, actually I'm not sure, like allegedly, I don't know, like is like are we held for like any sort of legal thing, but allegedly, and I say this because my mom told it to me, but she's like, apart from the Epstein thing, it's like apparently like he, and I mean like whatever, that might be like their way of life, but I don't know, like the entire thing, but apparently like he's like, okay, once a year I have to like, you have to let me go see my old girlfriend and stay with her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Not that there's like, there's all kind of marriages, but I don't know exactly um what that entailed, and whether how much, she was like, "Oh, I'm totally cool with this," or like, "Oh, you have to be cool with this," because there's a difference.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I read this article a while back about how the Gates Foundation, they would push all of these basically vaccines, immunization stuff that they couldn't use in the US because of the kind of issues, or it's like kind of expired technology, like just really crappy stuff. And they would push it off, you know, to these developing countries, specifically, I think in Africa, the
India.
article mentioned, because the Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation own stock in these same pharmaceutical companies that they're trying to push these really crappy vaccines and immunizations on these very underdeveloped or overexploited countries, probably a better way
I like that,
to phrase it.
overexploited overexploited countries. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, I think in India there was a certain, I don't know if it was with Gates, but there was like one where there was like a strong like reaction to it. And like he not only does he associate with like, sex traffickers like Epstein, he also associated and gave credibility to, Indian's prime minister Modi, who's like very much a fascist. And as we saw with um the protests of like the farmers, definitely not a good person. And I just, and yeah, and especially considering Mali has taken like certain almost ethnic cleansing laws, like with like the Muslim registration thing, but he's just like, it's chill, it's cool.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, like he's always being like, oh, I like to invest in biomedicine, blah, 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 blah. And again, it goes back to this like whole income tax. So because of it, he gets to like fund his money into education, but for whatever he wants, rather than, like him having to pay an income tax. And
That could go to public schools.
yeah, yeah, that could go to public schools, like instantly income tax now, or at least something less regressive, please.
Income, or maybe like, what is it, like capital gains, because he might not be getting a lot of income, but he has all this other kind of revenue that he's able to just keep increasing his wealth, because he's gotten so much more wealthy after actually stopping working at Microsoft. And you kind of talking about earlier, like philanthropy, how you're able to, you know, basically, launder somebody's image. Oh, like, look at all these good things I'm doing. I'm investing in arts. I'm donating to PBS. I'm donating to these schools. I'm trying to open charter schools. Look at all these good things I'm doing, but I'm also getting a lot richer while doing it. Like, what a perfect system for the capitalists.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, this started with like, I miss it when people used to say the second Gilded Age, because it is kind of like, but I think we've gone through the explosive part of that. Now we're moving towards sort of like, how do we deal with this second Gilded Age? But because like Rockefeller and Carnegie Mellon, like they were the ones who are like
Yep.
these huge imperialists. And only, not only that, when you learn about them in school, like it seemed like it's such a good thing, all like all the money they made. But they're the ones who started things like the philanthropy. And it also feels like, maybe I don't know, it might be just, maybe I'm reaching too far, but also feels like kind of sexist. Like they're like, oh yeah, but then I'm gonna marry this woman, and this woman basically is just gonna be like a philanthropist, or like something like that. And it's philanthropy is gonna be her job, and that's just, it's weird. It seems kind of like a formula that seems to be working for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet you still have, yeah, people thinking it's some great success story when somebody becomes a millionaire. Not really an indictment on the system that allows one person to, exploit so many people and the earth to just get this obscene amount of wealth, money, and power, while what we have 500 plus thousand homeless people, how many tens of millions of people without health care, how many places all across the country, or all across the world, I should say, that were bombing and sanctioning to death. And yeah,
Yeah, those
maybe
bombs are
maybe we could talk.
expensive.
Yeah, they are very expensive. That's, each time one of those are dropped, that's, I don't know how many schools or houses that could be built, either on the
Yeah.
places that they're dropping bombs on or here in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's like, oh, we have money for this, but not this. Not this is how it's not housing for all and healthcare for all is it's a radical, crazy idea. You
Too
monster.
expensive. How are we gonna pay
Yeah.
for that?
You want a war to start? You want to kill people because you want universal healthcare, but it's
Blank
totally like,
check.
yeah, it's really like irrational to be like, I'm just gonna bum the shit out of all these like people, or like I'm just gonna be rational about like keeping these kids in these like horrible conditions, which hasn't gotten better, and which seems like the media, except for the incendiary conservative media, talks about this. It's just like, I remember me and my friend were talking about this, like people really would be very, very mean or accuse you of being like all these things if you're like, voting for Biden is not going to make a lot of difference for some people. Um and then fast forward now, and we're like, we feel a little vindicated. I mean, like,
Unfortunately, I mean, I would have loved to have been proven wrong, but especially
yeah.
with regards to like imperialism and US foreign policy, like literally nothing has changed. And that's hugely disastrous for people, at the end of those bombs, or people being starved to death by US sanctions, whether it's Venezuela, Syria, the embargo on Cuba, the list goes on. Like all that horrible shit was going on under Trump. It's still going on under Biden. But yeah, I don't see a lot of people that were saying, vote for Biden, lesser of two evils, like crickets from that crowd right now.
Yeah, or if you do, they're like, hold on, give him 100 days, and it's just like, and there are things that Trump did that I think I mentioned before. Democrats probably love because they haven't changed back on it. Like the United States around like nuclear deal. It's not like Biden immediately reversed that, right? And then it's not like when Trump did one of the most significant probably violations of the Palestinian people, to declare Jerusalem a part of Israel.
Yeah.
I want to like ask like the press secretary, I'm like, so when are you gonna undo that Trump decision?
Mm,
Because they
yeah.
haven't done that. They haven't done that, and I'm so yeah.
Yeah, I saw a thing from, yeah, Jen Psaki, I think Biden's press secretary, how um she was actually talking the other day about how Biden actually wants to give more money to cops. It's the Republicans who want to defund the police. That's Biden's solution. Give them more money. I remember on the campaign trail, he was asked about cops shooting unarmed, you know, shooting them dead, and Biden was like, "Let's shoot him in the leg."
It's like, just shoot him a little bit. He
Yeah,
might bleed out, but just shoot
yeah.
him a little
Instead of
bit.
shooting him in the head, shoot him in the leg. Biden 2024.
Right, and it is just like this again, like just having two right wing parties, because
Yes,
some people are like,
yes.
the conservatives are like, no, oh my gosh, like they want to defund the police or like,
I
and
wish. I wish.
yeah, yeah, right. And then like people like Biden or other people being like, well, I think the whole Black Lives Matter really made us lose a lot of money, a lot of people, and it's like, okay, this is not looking good. This is not looking good. I feel like I'm looking at a doomsday clock, um, countdown until 2024,
Well,
just because
it'll
of
probably be, I doubt Biden would run again. It'd probably be Kamala Harris and probably whatever Republican far right wacko goes up against her probably will win, frankly.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, she dropped out before her home state of like California. But I mean, and a lot of
yeah.
stuff that she claimed to support, like at least decriminalizing. Maybe if she was talking about legalizing marijuana, doesn't support that anymore. I think she signed on to Bernie Sanders like universal health care bill, doesn't talk about that anymore. I mean, but yeah, it's, I don't
No,
know. You can't
no, you
get
did.
too like invested in, I guess, the electoral process because like, I don't know, you're just not really going to get anything from that because this system again was set up and built by, you know, landowning white supremacists and, designed to exclude everybody else. But yet we're supposed to celebrate this settler colonial state on the 4th of July. Like, I don't know.
Like, no thanks, no
Yeah.
thanks. I'm like, I'm not comfortable with like the continued like exploitation of people and the past genocides. I don't, but it is the most American thing ever when people are like, it's my right to set off fireworks, even though I'm gonna start fire that's gonna kill us all, or the environment. And I'm like, yep, yep, that's very on brand. It also is looking at one of another YouTuber who was just talking about the depressing reality of he's like pragmatically being like, yeah, so I know where I'm gonna move for like in case of climate change. And because he was just like talking about all these different pros and cons in the city that he lives in. I think he lives in Philadelphia, but because of just all this stuff, and he picked the Pacific Northwest as like maybe the place that he might suffer the least. So maybe maybe we're good. Maybe we're
Maybe.
good. Maybe
I
we're
don't
good.
know. It's like was extremely, extremely hot here last week, and we did have a pretty like bad wildfire season last year. I remember like the smoke was so bad, maybe for a week or two, like you weren't supposed to go outside at all. It's like, yeah, it's like I think almost no matter where you move in the world, you're going to be impacted by climate change. And again, like all these crises that capitalism creates, it's going to be the most vulnerable and marginalized, impacted by it the most. People who can't afford air conditioners, the people who can't, move or relocate because their house is now underwater because of rising sea levels. And I mean, that's just the insanity of a system that destroys, the people who created the wealth, the workers, but also the planet itself. I mean, how do people not make that like connection, like this system based on, unlimited growth on a finite planet? At some point, there's going to be a tipping point that we've already like reached, and everything's just like the natural world, humans are just, slowly dying off.
And what do the ultra capitalists want? To colonize
Go to
Mars.
space. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, actually, this is my last book that I'm showing because I might have to go soon and I'm hungry. But where is this one very special one? Even though I never really read Fahrenheit. What is that? Uh,
451, I think, maybe.
yeah, not the other movie. I should watch that movie too. But it's Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
In the Martian Chronicles, which I haven't really read all of these, but the first one is like it's slowly talking about like the humanity like leaving their planet, and in this like there's like allegorical stuff, like there's like the native Martians there, and there's a lot of talk about like how greed just completely destroy the planet and Earth, and now they go to another planet, which they destroy the people and that planet too. And
Yeah.
instead of like trying to change the system, they just keep hopping from planet. So we'll see what it says. Because he has a lot of. I don't think it's part of this collection, but another one is like I can't remember what it was, but it's like he was really anti-television, but
Interesting.
I'll have to look into that later. But he does have like a lot of his work has commented on like the police state, like before, like I think it's like the sidewalk or something like that. I'm trying to remember where he's just going for a walk and this like cop like stops him and like is gonna take him to jail because he's like, why are you inside? You know, and he's like, I'm just walking around here, but he's like, you're not supposed to. And it just shows like this reality of the police state.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah,
Makes
you
me
tried.
That's kind of makes me think like that's like the reality for people of color just walking around in their neighborhood, and there's cops there, especially if you're, a black person, a black man in particular.
Yeah, yeah. And people are like, and like, you don't want a police state, even if you're like, you know, not a person of color. Like, you really don't. I've never understand people like, if you only would have been good. I'm like,
Like
bro,
if you yeah, or people say, well, if you're not like committing any crime, then like what do you have to worry about? It's like cops don't make people safe. Like actually improving the material conditions in people's lives, that's what makes people safe. People commit crime because they have to get by. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
Address the root cause. Don't be like Biden and want to give the cops more money to brutalize, kill, and oppress.
Yeah, can we get some of more money for like, I don't know, people can don't have to work.
Yeah,
Remember when we were thinking like 2K a month? Did that
I
ever
know.
happen?
Yeah. And then Biden, yeah, he campained on 2000 and it ended up being like 1400. Like, oh,
Seriously, like, hold
you'll
on,
get
you
two.
gotta do the math.
Yeah. There was actually people like supposedly like progressives or liberals that were like, yeah, because he, the 600 and the 14, and you add that together, that's 2000. See, we're good.
Yeah, not that I'm
Oh
a
my
super
God.
huge fan of him because he wasn't always the best, but
Yeah.
that is definitely a 2 + 2 = 5 kind of feeling. Yeah.
For sure. For
So
sure.
I gotta check in
Um,
on my mom, but and
okay.
dinner, but it was good, and
Yeah. Do you want to end it with like something like positive or like a highlight thing real quick?
um yes. Well, I'm very excited to maybe have more time to read these books.
Nice.
Um, I'm really excited to read this one though because I think even if it has to be like step by step of reformist, like any kind of progress. So kind of looking at this and studying more about this, it makes me happy because again, you're like, I'm not so alone, and that's the thing. We're not alone. We just gotta realize that together we have much more power than they do.
Yeah.
And like once people realize that we don't need them, they
Hmm.
need us. We don't need them, they need us.
Hmm.
We just gotta get that collective mind. So, um, so yeah. What about you? What's something you're looking forward to,
Been
or
eating
that's
like a lot of uh, berries from this garden at my dad's house. Like these are gummy berries and they're really delicious, and just really been enjoying that. And then yeah, I started reading again Lenin's What Is to Be Done, which is really interesting. Um and yeah, he just talks about or no, I think it was Marx, but in that book about like it's okay to, maybe compromise a little bit on, practical things in order to kind of push the movement forward, but never compromise on theory or your principles. And it's like, yeah, that's really important. And Marx and Lenin are really awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but in Trotsky, but I'm a Trotsky fan girl. But I think Trotsky did have the same thing in which Trotsky, because it is the idea of like electoralism and being like so apathetic about it because it is, disappointing. But he's like, no, you just like collaborate with people, but you do have to break at a line in which it's not acceptable anymore. And yeah, I think that I really need to. I'm like, maybe that will be my thing. I'm looking forward to reading someone, and I want to like buy a book, but at the same time, I'm like, but Marxist.org has it for free.
There you go.
But it's so nice to have a book in hand.
Yeah, it is.
Um, yeah, I need to get. I might have to buy. There's some ones that I think are worth having, like
Mhm.
like in hand. Like I don't think I have it anymore. I need to have a new copy, but it's cliche. But I have such a big love for the Communist Manifesto, and actually reading it really, really made me understand like communism and socialism so much better. And I was born a socialist. They're like, everyone's like, when did you become a socialist? I'm like, when I came out of the womb. But technically, I was a C-section baby, but yes.
That's awesome.
Ah, all right, we'll see how it records in the cloud. Okay,
Okay, sounds good. See you later.
bye.
Bye.